You ever watch a crime show and feel like you need a dictionary just to keep up? They're throwing around words like autopsy, rigor mortis, culpable homicide. But what do they actually mean? Well, if you've ever wanted the ultimate decoder ring for the world of forensic science, you are in exactly the right place. All right, let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're breaking it all down into 5 key parts. First, we'll see where medicine and the law shake hands. Then, we'll get into the actual science of death. After that, we'll learn how to read the body's clues, check out some specialized fields, and we'll wrap up with the invisible stuff, poisons and the mind. Okay, first up, let's lay the groundwork. This is really the foundation, the concepts that connect the operating room to the courtroom. It's all about how science steps in to serve justice.
Now, this is a really important distinction to get right off the bat. Think of it like this. Forensic medicine is all about using medical science to answer legal questions, right? Like, how was this wound caused? But medical jurisprudence? That's flipped. It's about the legal rules for a doctor, things like malpractice or patient confidentiality. They're two sides of the same coin, really, bridging that world between medicine and law.
So when you hear the term medical evidence, don't just think of a bloody fingerprint. It's so much broader than that. The key here is that it includes all the legal tools, from a doctor's expert opinion to complex lab results that a court uses to figure out the truth. It's the absolute cornerstone of any case like this.
All right, let's do a quick-fire round of courtroom lingo. A subpoena, that's the official document that says you have to show up to court. A common witness is just a regular person who can only talk about what they saw or heard. But an expert witness, like a forensic scientist, gets to give their professional opinion to help explain the facts. Now, a hostile witness is someone who's clearly not cooperating, maybe even lying. And speaking of lying, if you do it under oath, that's a very serious crime called perjury.
Okay, so we've got the legal side down. Now let's shift gears and get into the nitty-gritty biological reality that investigators find at a crime scene. It's time to talk about the science of what happens after we die. Death isn't just a single lights-out moment. It's actually a process. First, you have somatic death. That's what we usually think of as death, when the heart, lungs, and brain have all stopped for good. But then, over the next hour or two, molecular death happens. That's when all the individual cells and tissues start shutting down because they've run out of fuel.
After death, the body is kind of like a clock, and it follows a really predictable schedule. First up is post-mortem hypostasis, which is just a fancy way of saying that gravity pulls the blood down, causing a purplish stain. Then comes the famous one, rigor mortis, that stiffening of the muscles. And finally, you get putrefaction, which is when bacteria start to break everything down. Each of these stages is a huge clue for determining the time of death.
Asphyxia is a huge category in forensic science. Basically, it's the umbrella term for any situation where breathing is interfered with and the body gets starved of oxygen. And that, of course, can lead to death.
Now, this is a critical distinction that often gets mixed up. With hanging, the force that's cutting off the airway comes from the person's own body weight because they're suspended. But with strangulation, the force is applied by something like a rope, but without the body being suspended. It sounds like a tiny detail, but for an investigator, that difference is absolutely massive.
You see, every single injury, every mark on a body, it's a piece of a story. And if you know the language, you can start to read that story. So, let's learn a bit of that language now.
Okay, let's kick things off with blunt force trauma. There are 3 main types you'll hear about. Abrasions are basically scrapes. Contusions are what we all know as bruises. That's just blood leaking out under the skin. And lacerations, those are actual tears or splits in the skin caused by some kind of crushing force. On the other hand, you have sharp force trauma. An incised wound is a nice, clean cut. Think of a knife, and it's usually longer than it is deep. A chop wound is totally different. That's from a heavy weapon, like an axe. It's deep, it's gaping, and it often goes right down to the bone.
This is just fascinating. So when someone gets hit in the head, you get a coup injury, right where the impact happened. Makes sense. But here's the crazy part. The brain can actually slosh around inside the skull and slam into the opposite side. That causes what's called a contre-coup injury. So the damage can actually be on the complete opposite side of the blow.
At its core, the definition of homicide sounds pretty straightforward, right? One person kills another. But of course, in the legal world, it's never that simple. There are layers of complexity, which leads us to the different ways homicide is classified.
The real difference between all of these really boils down to one word: intent.
Justifiable homicide is legal, like a police officer in the line of duty or clear self-defense. Excusable homicide is a total accident with no criminal intent. Culpable homicide is when someone is at fault, they either meant to cause harm or knew their actions were super dangerous, and then there's murder. That's the most serious kind, which requires what the law calls malice aforethought. It was planned.
All right, now we're going to venture into some of the more specialized areas of forensics. These are complex, often sensitive topics where getting the terminology exactly right is absolutely crucial.
So, forensic psychiatry is all about applying the science of the mind to legal issues. And here, the details really matter. A delusion is a false belief someone holds on to, no matter the evidence. A hallucination is when you see or hear something that isn't there at all. But an illusion, that's different. That's when you misinterpret something that is actually there, like thinking a coat rack in a dark room is a person.
Now, this is a really tough but incredibly important definition. The term battered child isn't just about a single injury. It specifically refers to a pattern of repeated, non-accidental injuries from a caregiver. This is where forensic medicine plays such a vital role in identifying these tragic situations and protecting children.
Okay, for our final section, we're going to look at the invisible evidence. We're talking about the substances and the states of mind that can have a huge impact on a case, starting with the world of toxicology.
The definition of a poison is actually way broader than you might think. It's pretty much any substance, whether it's a solid, liquid, or gas, that can cause harm or death when it gets into your body. That simple idea is the foundation for the entire field of toxicology.
People mix these terms up all the time, but they have distinct meanings. Drug addiction involves chronic intoxication that's physically harmful. Drug habituation is more about a psychological or emotional need for a drug. And the term drug dependence, well, that's just the big umbrella term that covers both of them.
This refers to an incredibly dangerous practice that you sometimes see in the news. Body packing is when someone swallows packages of illegal drugs to smuggle them across borders. It creates a massive medical risk, and it's something that toxicologists and ER doctors have to be prepared to deal with. So there you have it. We've gone through the language of justice, from the courtroom all the way to the lab. We have these precise clinical terms to describe death, injury, and all the things that can influence us. But that leaves us with one final thought, one big question. We've learned the vocabulary, but does just defining an act ever really truly explain it? Something to think about.